All right, ladies, welcome to this episode of the Joyful Scaling Podcast. I am here with a client, Danielle Mendoza. She's on fire right now on the recording of this. Okay, she is a Christ-loving wife, mom, podcast host, international best-selling author, and a business development consultant. After facing curable but stubborn skin cancer, she realized her calling was to make sure women have a chance to help real people by sharing their God-given gifts and talents before leaving the earth. And so can you see how our purposes are absolutely aligned, right? And Danielle is committed to helping busy women CEOs create a lasting legacy by expanding their impact through a podcast, book, or a certification course. And so what I'm super excited to talk to Danielle about is this high ticket offer that I helped her a little bit. This is her baby, and I just helped her a little bit, but I just love this concept. It's called the Legacy Project Accelerator, where she's helping brilliant, busy women create a high level strategy for bringing their dream project out of their head and into the world in just, hold on to your hat, 90 days. Okay, let's say hello to Danielle.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Judy. Thanks for having me.
Hello. Oh my goodness. You know what I love about Danielle, ladies, is she is an action taker. Okay? So she's not only smart and she's got these big dreams, but she says, "What do you think?" And then I say, "I think this," and next thing you know it's done. So let's just give the ladies a little bit of background and start, the Legacy Project Accelerator. Where did this notion even start?
Well, it definitely comes from kind of the beautiful meeting of this idea that I'm called to help women, leave that lasting legacy with intention. We all leave a legacy. We all leave a story in this world of who we are and the things that we did and how we served. But when I was facing my skin cancer, it kind of woke me up and I was like, okay, all these things I've been doing have been great things. I was an awesome mom. I still am. And, was doing lots of things in my community, but I realized this didn't feel like it was enough. I didn't feel the fullness of God's calling for me playing out in the world. And when we lean into that fullness is when we're truly leaving an intentional legacy. We're leaving that story of who we're meant to be behind. And so I stepped into that. And then I realized I have this real skill for taking, a big idea, a vision, and breaking it down into parts. And like you said, taking action on those parts and just bringing it to life fairly quickly. And I think some of that was definitely honed in my theater and production background. It's just something that happens in that space where you're like, okay, we're going to do this show and here's what it's going to look like and here's what we need. And then everything moves very, very quickly. And it's a matter of bringing high production value to those actions so that you end up with a really quality product at the end. And so I've brought all of that with me and it's all kind of mixed together in, the beautiful simmering pot that is my life. And now here I am ready to help women take their big ideas and bring them to life in a quality way that demonstrates their expertise and elevates their brand and business so that they can leave their lasting impact. And I don't believe in taking a lot of time to do these things. I mean, the longer you take to write a book, for instance, the longer you have to wait to leverage it. The creation part is very internal. It's very much our own kind of little secret thing that we're doing. And that's great. But I find a lot of women stay there. They stay in this safe space of creation and they don't actually get to the point of sharing what it is that they're doing very quickly. And the quicker we can do that, it's almost like ripping off the Band-Aid. Like just do it real quick, get it over with, get it out there and start to move forward and start to, show up in the world in a great way because we all run on limited time. We're human beings. And so we don't know when the end is going to come. And I hate to be kind of morbid about that, but it's just the truth. So we can't wait for the right time to be putting our stuff into the world. We need to, bring it to life and put it out there.
That's so true. Now, so much of what you said, it is an absolute skill that you have that you can take this big, what feels like a Herculean task, and break it down into little bites and to get it done. And if you know me, my mantra, my kids here on my personal side, I don't know that I've ever shared this on a podcast before, but I love to say, And I just said it the other day, you know what I'm good at, hon? I get it done. I get it DON. And I know it's so stupid DON doesn't spell done, but that's what I say. I say I get stuff DON. That's what I do. But I will tell you that I've been kind of sort of writing books now for years. Like, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this one. Oh, wait. Now I kind of got the outline to that, but now I really feel like this is the book. So for a scatterbrain like me, who's got all these great ideas, what would be some hints and tricks maybe to get it done?
Okay, so definitely when we have a lot of good ideas, we're that visionary person, it can be difficult to know where to start because we can't do all the things at once. We have to take our time. I know that kind of contradicts what I just said about getting it done and get it out there, but we do have to take a little bit of time where we're dedicated and focused on one project at a time. And so what I think you could do is, line up all of those projects, line up all of those books on a piece of paper, for instance, and look at them like dominoes. Which one can I start with that will naturally, as it's finished, fall into the next one and kind of trigger the next one and so forth, and be able to see, what would be the good starting place and what's good for you in terms of that starting place, but also what's good for your audience, what makes the most sense for what your market needs right now. And then how can that trigger the catalyst of the next idea? And then how can that lean into the next idea? And then before you know it, 5 years has gone by and you've got 5 books out, and you didn't sit there for 5 years hemming and hawing over which book should I write. And then, you've got one half written.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what do you tell with someone who, and again, we're focusing on books, but you do other things, getting that podcast up and what was the other thing? Oh, a certification course, which is another goodie too. But what about when we see that dancing cursor and it's like we labor over even getting started? I think, and that plus, we imagine our favorite books and we're like, well, wait a minute, I have to think this through. How's this going to be laid out? How do we get even past those stuck points?
Well, that's part of the magic that I bring forward in the Legacy Project Accelerator. So I've got an efficient and effortless chapter framework that helps every author decide, what am I even trying to say here? And it definitely starts with that idea of the bigger message. What is the big overall umbrella of a message for your book? Same with your podcast. If you're looking at doing a podcast, yes, we can start to think about different episode titles and, guests we might want to have on an interview and where am I going to take this? But it all boils down to one umbrella message. So like your podcast, it's the Joyful Scaling podcast. That is a message. And then what you want to do is, as you plan out the rest of it, kind of from the end, working backward, you're weaving this golden thread of your message through everything. So it guides you. It guides that strategy. So it's not just a blinking cursor on a blank screen. You start with this framework developed where you know what the overall message is, what each chapter is going to be about, how you want to demonstrate the message of each individual chapter, and how those walk the reader through the experience of shifting their mindset or taking in that overall inspiring message, so that you're leaving them with a wonderfully guided product at the end. And that guides your writing. So it's really not something where you're just sitting down like, well, where do I start? And that's not to say you won't have moments of that. I mean, even writing my own book, one day I called up my husband and I was like, the book, it just starts. And he was like, yeah, that's what books do. And I was like, okay, I guess you're right. I mean, we hit our own mindset blocks so often in, doing these projects and living these things out. But that's why we need guidance. That's why we need someone there who we can, pick up the phone or get on our computer and be like, oh my gosh, this is coming up and I'm not sure if it's right. And then, with my clients, I can help refer them back to that overall framework. Does it still fit in this new idea that you've had? Or does what you're doing feel like it doesn't work because you've kind of taken that one piece out of the overall framework and you're looking at it in an isolated sense? And once you look at it back in the bigger picture, you're like, oh, okay, it does actually fit. So those kinds of things can be troubleshot along the way. And it's such a guided process. You're really not left sitting there just wondering like, well, what do I do now?
That's so good. And, from working together, that you hit on it, about the audience. Who is your audience? Who are you speaking to? And the same applies with, every offer that we have. So for this particular offer, I would love you to explain, like, who is it for? And ladies, this isn't really just a pitch for Danielle, although because she's my client and this is my platform, sure, she's awesome. I would highly recommend her. But I want you to understand the clarity that she's going to speak to in a second when she answers my question. And are you this dialed in when it comes to who your ideal client is? Because too many of you are saying, I want to help everybody. And that's well and fine, okay? But you're not going to cut through the noise if you're not speaking to one person that you have clearly in your brain. So, who is this legacy project accelerator, really made for?
It's designed for the busy, brilliant, multi-six-figure CEO woman. So she's got a lot going on, and she's had this inkling of an idea, something she'd like to put out into the world that usually does relate closer to her lasting legacy than just showing up and serving clients every day. Not to minimize what any of us does with our clients, but there's a bigger picture for us to leave behind. And so she's had this idea, and she sort of stuck it on the back burner because she doesn't feel like she has the time. She doesn't feel like she has the expertise for that particular thing. So we're all an expert at something. You don't get to multi six figures without being an expert at something, but you may not be an expert at writing a book, at creating a podcast, at developing a certification course. And so what you need is someone who has that expertise, like me, who can come in and help take that vision and break it down and make it really, really possible. And it saves so much time for these women because they don't have to spend all that time on Google searching and questioning and signing up for the course about how to write your book, and then signing up for the course about what do I do after I write it, and then signing up for the course about what do I do after I publish it. That's all covered in the Accelerator, and it really is a strategy that's laid out in just 90 days. So it's something that's very succinct but very, very deep. And so it's for those women who are ready to finally get that off the back burner, bring it out to the world, and make it happen quickly. And the reason they're multi six-figure business owners, and I hate to limit it to a revenue level, but it's someone who is willing to make that financial investment, because there are pieces beyond myself that they'll have to invest in. For instance, a book needs to be edited. You need a cover design. You need it formatted. You need to create a bestseller campaign, which usually involves a best-selling launch team. And so that's something you have to be ready to do. You have to be ready to say, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I know that it's going to save me time. I know that it's going to allow me to leverage the genius of others and be ready to go on that journey and just watch it unfold.
Yes, so good. So good. There's a couple of things I really want to highlight here because I love that you said that what this is very specific and unique but deep. Like it's almost like narrow and deep because of the depth of the touch and the experience and the how do I want to say this? The I guess the expertise that you bring to make this process so tight and concise, because women in a multi sixes towards seven figures, we have more money than time. And while we could piecemeal it with this course and that, I will never buy a course. I don't do courses anymore. I invest heavily in coaches. Like I don't, so that's really good. Talk to us about a lot of people say, I'm going to write a book. And then they think that that's going to bring them, or a podcast for that matter, and that by just simply having a podcast or writing a book, that clients will be coming to them. But that's not the case, and that's where the leveraging of the project comes into play. I'd love to have you talk about that just a bit.
Absolutely. So it definitely goes beyond the creation phase. That idea of writing a book, making a podcast, that's all creation. And that's great. But it's what do we do with that creation that's actually going to bring in that return on our investment? So first, you have to have a strategy for launching that creation. How are you going to unveil it to the world in a way that gets people excited, that gets their eyes on it, invites them to come and interact with your book or your podcast or even your certification course, so that they are ready? They're like kind of waiting on the edge of their seat, and then you release it and it comes out with a big bang, and then it fizzles out. Anything that comes out with a big bang fizzles out. And so you have to be ready for that point as well. And that's where the evergreen monetization strategy comes in. You want to be able to leverage this project over and over and over again. And you want to be able to leverage the content of the project. You spent so much time and effort in the creation phase that you need to be able to utilize that over and over again. So you're not stuck in a new creation phase, always trying to create something new and just sort of sitting on the surface with things. You want to be able to take off in flight, so to speak. So you want to be able to say, okay, here's what I've got. Here's ways that I can break it down, continue to leak it out with excitement, with intrigue, with interest to the right client market to draw those people in so that they get into my client nurturing path and I can continue to close the sales.
So good. That is so good. And I love that you touched on something that I think happens a lot, and that is we become creation machines. So many people are out there saying, content is king and consistency is queen or something like that. But I recently did a podcast episode about creating a lifetime of content in about an hour, and it's so true. You could have all of your topics unless you decide to pivot in your business, but content should not be something that has us weighed down day after day. And to your point, now you've created this podcast or you've created this book. How can we take what you've already done? And you know what? That's what smart investors do outside of business. Like that's what they do, investors when they buy a house. Okay, I buy a house. What am I going to do with it? It's always, how is my money going to work for me? Or how will what I've already produced, in that case money, how will that continue to work for me? So I love that it's not just here's the book out, God bless, there you go, you're a best-selling author, but it's now what is it going to mean for you? And all of that feeds in to the ROI. Because think about this, if you write a book and the sales of the book, people think about, I couldn't care less about sales of the book. I couldn't care less. It's about what happens after that. And so when you're at this level and that's what you want to do, it's about how can I, well, you've said it, how can I leverage what I'm doing in a way that won't keep me on the wheel of creation? And it's something almost like the team can do. Like you said, it's evergreen.
Absolutely. And it's setting up that framework ahead of time that enables you to then kind of hand it over to your team and let them execute on it. So you've spent your valuable time as the genius of your business creating this content, and then you're not wasting your time in breaking it down, in putting it out there, in saying, oh, what picture do I put with this? Or, oh, how should I say that? It's all done, especially with the book. I mean, you can leverage a book over and over again for years to come. And I'm so glad you said that statement about not caring about the sales of the book, because 98% of self-published books sold less than 5,000 copies in 2020. So book sales is not where the return on your investment actually comes from, unless you're like J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, Neil Gaiman. They get the sales and that makes them their money. But for most of us, our genius is not in the writing. We're not, authors as our genius. We're authoring to share our genius. And then we need to be able to leverage what we authored to continue to demonstrate that genius over and over again, so that the people who need our services and need our help can see that we are the ones to help them. And a book is a great way to do that, because you leak out pieces of it in your content, or you send copies of it to people for free, and then they start reading your book. And that means that you are essentially alone with them in their head and in their heart for hours. And you don't have to show up and do that face to face. You've got this great tangible thing that can facilitate that for you, and they're growing in their know, like, trust of you. And by the end of a book, they can see your personality, your values, how you operate, what kind of service you provide, and whether or not you're the right person for them. So you've done a lot of that client nurturing legwork kind of on autopilot. And it's a great way to then invite people to come join your list, or to come see you speak, or to come engage with you in some way, because you're right, content is king, but I like to say engagement is queen, and the queen runs the house. So we really have to focus on how are we engaging with these people and nurturing them through that client pathway to hopefully a closed sale.
I love that. Say that again. Content is king, but
so content is king, but engagement is queen, and the queen runs the house.
I I so love that. That is so good. All right. Well, I want to just spend a moment talking about your experience inside the academy. I forget, how long have you been in the academy now?
Oh gosh, it's been like 3 months. It hasn't even been
Okay.
that long.
Wow. Okay. You've done so much. Why don't you just share a little bit about why you joined the academy and your experience in those couple of months?
Yeah, so I've been feeling for a while like I need a business coach. That's definitely something, I'm like you, I want to invest in myself and invest in coaching because I believe in coaching. I offer that to people, and if I'm not seeking it out for myself, how could I expect others to believe in my services for them? And so I've known I wanted to work with someone, but I've really struggled because part of what makes my consultancy different is I am not a cookie cutter person. I believe in personalization. I believe in doing things in the right way that feel aligned to you. And so many of the coaching programs out there don't really offer that. It's very much a cookie cutter approach. It's a heavy, heavy focus on let's get you to six figures, multi six figures. And that's good. It's good to have those goals, but they do it in this way that makes it feel like your success is nothing unless you hit six figures, and that six figures is the bottom level of success. And I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. We need to be able to celebrate every dollar, or why would 100,000 of them matter? It's you're not going to be happy at 100,000 if you're not happy at 10,000, honestly. So
Oh
that's
man,
something.
that's amazing right there. And that's part of like enjoying the process, right? Oh, that's
Absolutely.
so good.
Yeah, that's that joy piece. And to me that goes back to the faith piece as well, because you really believe in your services and you have faith in your calling when you're willing to celebrate every single client that you sign on. And it's great to multiply that into 100 clients or more, or group programs, but you have to believe in the one. You have to believe in the one client, the $1 that makes a difference. And then those things add up over time. So I find that, I have a six-figure goal. I absolutely do, but I just don't like those programs that focus on that as the sole marker of your success. I think it really comes down to how are we serving others? How are we leaving this intentional legacy? That's a value that runs through my own business journey very, very deep, not just in what I do with others. And so that really drew me to your program because you take that approach, this idea of showing up to serve, making sure that marketing is about relationships and sales is about an invitation. I mean, I even wrote about that in my book in those terms. And then to, get on the phone with you and hear you talking about it that way, I was just like, oh, this girl gets my heart. Like she just gets it. She is going and approaching business the same way that I am. And that felt so aligned for me. And then the fact that you bring Christ into it, that it becomes this faith fueled experience, that it is about rising above the enemy's lies and being able to say, okay, I'm feeling this or I'm thinking that, but what does God have to say about me? That just really changed the game. So, I've heard of your thought model in other places, but I've never heard of the faith fueled thought model and this idea of how do I develop that new thought that I'm going to focus on in a really genuine and true way. It was always just like, pick a new thought, pick one that's better, like just out of the ether, out of nowhere. And how do we really lean into the belief of that if we feel like we're just convincing ourselves of something new? That didn't resonate with me so well. But the way that you approach it, this idea of finding the new thought, it blew me away. I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like it just was a breath of fresh air. And so I knew that I had to jump in and work with you.
Oh wow, that's so good. And I'll tell you that when we have our group calls, Danielle is furiously taking notes, and I love to see that. Okay, well, let me take some people that take notes might just take notes and not act on it. So when I see that the avid note taking and I see the action taking, then you know what I say? Success. It's theirs, it's yours, it's there right there in front of you, and it will come. And I love also that you said that I didn't even realize that money is good. You can do good things with it, and it means a level of success. But another thing of success is not just getting there, it's how do you get there? Right? It's like do I want to get to $100,000 in a hustle kind of thing? Or do I want to learn how to get there and it might take a year longer or so? and because I'm going to learn how to do business in a way that is sustainable, that allows me to be a mom, that allows me to be present and have a life. So it's not just the dollars, it's the how. But give the ladies listening a sneak peek into what happens on our weekly group calls.
Yeah, so we have the opportunity to bring our challenges to you, Judy, to, engage your brain and your expertise around those challenges. And then in the process of sharing that, it never ceases to amaze me how someone else can bring a challenge. And on the surface, it seems like it has nothing to do with my business because they're a realtor, they're an interior designer, something that's not really related to what I do. And then as we dive into it and we dive into the mindset piece and we dive into the ways to move through this challenge, it always applies to my business. It always applies to something that I've faced or am facing. And so it's a really valuable way to, just show up. And even if you feel like you don't have anything to talk about, that we can all learn from each other in this really nice safe space of an incubator is a really safe space. We're bringing challenges, not just in business, but in real life, because business and real life overlap. And that's not always comfortable. It's not always fun to come in and say, I've got these bills due and I need money and I don't really know how to make that happen in my business right now because I'm stuck on this piece. And, to kind of like work through how those are woven together in this safe space, in this really caring, compassionate place is so, so important. I try to cultivate that in my own consultancy, and to be a part of that on the client receiving end is really, really valuable.
That's so good. Yeah, because ladies, what we're talking about, we're not talking about the mastermind. We're talking about more the entry level, which is currently called the Academy, which is going to be called Joyful Six Figures Accelerator coming soon. But the idea of weekly coming together and coaching going on. And I'll tell you, it took me years to understand what coaching is. Coaching is not, I will show you my process, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, go do it. I mean, to me, that's strategy. But you need the coaching end where I show you your brain, because I've had a coach to show me my brain. And in the beginning, I resisted and I said, yeah, my brain, whatever, just tell me what to do. And then I realized, no, your brain, your thoughts is what allows anything you're doing to work or not work, as the case may be. So I also appreciate what you said about, I say this every time, ladies, what can you take away from this? Right? If you think it has nothing to do with you, you've got to ask yourself, where does this apply to me? And so it's that going deeper that that I see accelerated success in the ladies that are in their confidence, in getting new clients, in even sticking their neck out and, doing scary things, quote unquote, right? Like asking them to be on a podcast, pitching themselves on a podcast, for example. But can you give us a bird's eye view of the business when you started in the academy and what's happening now inside?
Yeah, so Confident Concept was sort of just an idea when I first started looking at the academy. And I was like, well, I know I want to develop this amazing high ticket offer. I've got another offer in a different business that is for women who are newer to business, but I was being approached by women who were more established in that multi six figure range for help. And in response to that, I thought, okay, I need to create an offer around this instead of just having these random, like one-off helpful calls. And so I set out to do that, but I was still not sure exactly how to position it, exactly how to show up in that market space. That market space is very new to me. And so I just wanted to make sure that I had the backing of someone who does get it and someone who can help me see those things. Because Darren Hardy says it in his book, The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster, trying to see our own mind or trying to see our own business is kind of like trying to read the label from inside of the Coke bottle. So we need someone outside of ourselves. I'm a certified coach. I can do all the thought work, But when it comes to doing it for myself, it's so tricky because I'm inside that Coke bottle trying to read the label. So to have someone like you who can help see that in my offer, in my own thought process, and relay that back to me is just really, really powerful. And now I know exactly who I'm talking to. I know exactly how I want to help them. I know exactly what this offer can actually bring in terms of results. And that faith in myself and that faith in my calling has grown because I've been able to see it resonate with so many other people. It's not just like me alone in the corner of my room, which I am so often because that's where I work, but just being able to jump on with people and say, this is what I was thinking, and this is how I see that going. And to have that reflected back to me in the excitement of others, in the validation from others, has been awesome. It's allowed me to continue to pitch that project, that product to the right people, to make sure I've got the right people on the phone when I'm talking to them. I can very quickly see when it's not the right people, and instead of getting defeated by that, I can come back to the group and say, well, this is the experience I had on this call. And I can kind of get validation from everyone of like, yeah, it sounds like they just weren't the right client type for this service. And it takes the emotion and heavy thought, questioning and all of that out of it. And I can just be like, okay, gotcha. The label on the Coke bottle is red and there's white writing. And, someone who wants green isn't going to want that. And that's okay. And it's made it a much more powerful experience. And then in the process, being able to understand, okay, I've got this high level service to help these high level people. What can I do in the gap out of that same zone of genius? Now I've developed my multi-author book, and I've been able to bring on some amazing clients into that book who are going to be becoming best-selling authors and positioning their business in powerful ways by writing just a chapter. That's been really validated as well, because then I can get that feedback of, yeah, that sounds really aligned. You're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall or, starting a car wash off of your business consultancy. Like, it's still something that's very much in the same vein of service and values and belief system. And just having that validated makes it a lot easier to hit that gas pedal and just go.
Yes. And we're celebrating your first 5-figure month.
That's right. Yeah.
Woo!
I'm so happy. Yeah. It's been amazing. First
That is
ever.
so good. The first ever 5-figure month. Hurrah. Hallelujah. And congrats. I mean, this is just so good.
Thank
So what
you.
do you think? What do you think is making the difference to get you to this new level of success and confidence, really?
I think it's been crafting this offer that really helps lift people up and being able to so confidently speak to the results that it can bring. And, just continuing to get on those sales calls. I mean, that can be so tough. And I think I struggled with that for a while early on in business. I still had some of that mindset of like, gosh, I'm so new and I'm not sure if people will want this. And how can I be a business consultant when I don't have a business that's multi six figures? And, just struggling with some of those lies that we take in and that we believe, and being able to move through that and just calm that energy and say, I definitely have something to offer that is worth every single penny. It is really, really valuable. It's going to serve these people in a very truthful way. And being able to lean into that and say, God qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified.
Oh,
And being
yeah.
able to just say, okay, I'm going, God. I'm going to go forward and I'm going to let you qualify me every step of the way, and just put it out there and get past a lot of that fear, because it is, the more people we talk to, the more people we can invite in. And I was sort of doing the opposite. I was trying to, make sure they were exactly the right person before I even brought it up. And now I'm like, well, let's bring it up and let's talk about it. And maybe you're not the right person, and that's okay. And I believe that I can still serve you on the call in some way and leave you with at least a nugget of wisdom that you can go execute on, and just allow that to be good enough on every sales call,
So good.
and just lean into it.
So good. So has your mind, I mean, you mentioned my faith-fueled thought model. Has that been a factor in this growth of confidence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, I've used something similar to the thought model in the past. But that idea of just grabbing a new positive thought kind of out of nowhere didn't sit well with me. Part of my background is I was in a little bit of an abusive relationship for a while, and I did a lot of convincing of myself that things were fine and that this would get better and that things were okay. And doing that, choosing a positive thought out of nowhere, kept me in that hard space. And it took a lot to wake up and say, no, I'm worth more than this. I need to leave. And I don't ever want to get back to that. So I just didn't really trust this idea of, okay, well, what's the positive thing we can focus on? But the way you challenge it, the way you challenge the false thought or the negative thought, because it's not necessarily false. Sometimes there is at least a modicum of truth to it. I mean, our brain is finding evidence for it. That's why we believe it and have this thought stuck around in the first place. And so the way that you say, okay, challenge that now, go find these other truths, and here's where to find them. It's just so much more powerful. I'm like, oh, this new positive thought really is true. And it's something I can practice and replace this negative thought with. And often then that positive thought I learn is even more true than the negative one, even though my brain found truths for it and was able to adopt it. In that faith-fueled space of finding the new positive thought, it's just changed everything. It's so much stronger. And I feel like I'm on a way stronger foundation.
That is amazing. All glory to God. Because I still remember sitting on my couch when he gave me that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds really good. It's just crazy, right? All right. So, last question. As far as strategy, what was the biggest takeaway so far after a couple of months inside?
I think showing up with the consistency with my message and how to take that message and break it down for social media posts or for a blog, or even just in presenting myself on different podcasts or in speaking engagements, and just going forward with that message and how to position it in a strong way and make sure that the language I'm using is talking to the right people and calling in those people instead of just assuming that I know they're the right person based on what I see. And that has been the biggest thing that's helped me to make sure that my strategy is widespread but strong.
Mm.
So like a really strong net instead of just like all these little tendrils of trying different things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I messaging to me, heck with the website. Do you know the problems of the one person that you really want to hit? I mean, that's where you gain, just as you've said, this confidence that I know this person and I know their struggles. I know what they are, wake up in the middle of the night and think about. And I know, either they have littles they're running after or they're empty nesters, whatever it is. So I really, really love the clarity, and I just really appreciate you sharing that. So, all right. So where can our listeners find you? Like where's the best place for them to hook up with you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at confident.concept. So that's probably the best place to get to know me and just, pop into my DMs and say hi, and we can have a chat. If you want to find out more about the Legacy Project Accelerator, that's on my website at confidentconcept.com.
Okay, awesome. And I'll have those links there. As we wrap up, anything on your heart that we didn't touch on that you would love to have our listeners make sure they hear today?
I love your triangle of belief. So the idea of believing in ourselves, believing in our offer, and believing in God, all of those needing to be equal to create this really strong foundation, just priceless.
Thank you for that. Again, I don't even feel like I could take credit for it because it's a God thing. But I'm so glad you mentioned that. Well, Danielle, thank you and congratulations on all of your success. I'm so proud of you. All right, ladies, we will see you here next time. And if you have not yet left a rating or review, please consider doing that. It's so helpful for us. We want to spread the message out. I think we're almost up to 40 countries, and we're getting so close to 100,000 downloads. So thank you for sharing this out, and let me know what topics you'd like to hear more about, and also what guests you might like to see on the show. So until next time, mwah.
Fantastic.